Say, let's bring in John Roque and find out right now. Just remarkable. I just looked at one chart out of the blue, John. Let's bring it up right away. Dreaded first chart. We'll bring up dreaded first chart. We'll bring up dreaded first chart. There it is. Tom calls this soup. I call a chart that's really a mess and trendless soup. Now, you and I look at a lot fancier things than what we're showing here, the price of copper. What do you do when a chart is indeterminate?
Well, for us on this one, we're actually we have a stronger opinion than you do. We think that the copper is a better sale here than it is a buy, and we think copper is going to work lower. And it's likely, although I'm not an economics guy, that this is telling us that the economies are weakening if this thing cannot stay strong, and we think it's going to weaken. Do
you agree with Neil Ferguson that China GDP, China economics is just assumed to grow, and that may be a difficult assumption?
That's above my pay grade, but suffice it to say that the copper chart probably agrees with Niall Ferguson.
Okay, let's get going here. We've got a lot of charts to look at with Mr. Roque. Chart number 2, VIX. Everybody quotes it. The media quotes it. I quote it. There it is, back to 2007, and I strapped the deviations across it. The red line's a center trend, the green line 1 deviation, the blue line 2 deviation. We explode out Lehman end of 08. This was a pretty harsh move. Look way over on the right side of the screen, if you would there, Victor. Way over on the right side, that spike up. This was a bold move recently, wasn't it?
It was a bold move, and we think the VIX doesn't lead. It just confirms. And so yes, the VIX got very overbought, like the S&P got very oversold. But if the VIX were a stock, I think you'd be a buyer. So we think that there will be, after this rally, which probably runs into some trouble at 1227 or thereabouts, maybe if we're lucky, it gets to 1250, but we think there'll be a retest, and consequently, we think the VIX will be higher again.
Yeah, Sarah, get up there a banner that says, Roque, VIX confirms, doesn't lead. Elegant chart 1. There it is. We've already got it up. Way ahead of me, guys. Thank you. Roque support becomes resistance. Okay, folks, some explanation. The green line's a 50-day moving average. The white line's a 200-day moving average. You don't see me use these much because they're usually just thrown out as a dumb line. They're not a dumb line here, are they, John?
No, we think that they actually have some importance. It's the slope of the moving averages more than anything else. And as you can see, the 50-day, which is the green line, is sloping downward, negative sign. Of course, the S&P is below it. The S&P is also below its 200-day, which is the white line, which is slowing and slowly starting to turn lower. So the former support levels were 1250, 1220, and 1227. And of course, you can see we're below all those. They now become resistance on counter-trend rallies.
A moving average is nothing more than a look-back trend.
Correct.
If you're trend-based, you're looking at them as being tipping points after the fact to show that the trend's through.
And that's okay with us, right? Because usually when a trend changes, it tends to stay in force for some length of time. It takes a lot of damage or a lot of improvement to change the slope of a 200-day moving average, which is why we tend to focus on it.
Too much information. We're all chart. I love it. We could do a whole show. John, we could do a whole show of charts. How exciting. Cardiac arrest. Look at that. Back to 06 again. There's the cardiac arrest. 52-week new lows. And you can see again the spike up. What did you learn from the way we made new lows this time around?
On August 8th, there were nearly 1,300 new lows. What we did was we went back to 1992, and you tend to get these sort of spikes, and they tend to cluster. So we've had 1,292 on August 8th, August 9th, 717. The number of new lows has clearly abated here. But we think that we're going to get another spike up in the number of new lows as the S&P will retest the 1,100 level. So we think that we're getting a reprieve here, and the number of new lows is abating because we're rallying back.
Chart number 4, let's look at the dividend aristocrats. This goes against the short term. If you just look at the long term, what do buy and hold do here? They bought these stocks. They're getting a dividend. They're getting dividend growth, a proven strategy. Clearly there. Semi-log chart, slope matters in honor of John Roque. Okay, but if you're buy and hold, why do I care what you think about the short term?
Well, because ultimately the short terms impact the longer term, right? And if you have enough damage short term, it does impact the long term. We're interested in this chart as well because we think post a low, whenever it occurs, we'd love to see stocks like utilities or other dividend payers outperform or perform well and lead. Given that the yield on the treasuries is so low, we think that these things are offering some opportunity, especially on the dividend side. Stocks like Southern Utility, for example.
Just had their CEO here sitting in this chair. What a track record.
Terrific stock.
It's not like a utility.
Correct. Terrific stock.
Very good. Let's come back. John Roque with us, folks. And John, here's the trap. You're a technical chart guy, which I've got a great affinity for. You get on TV and everybody shows a lot of charts. Let's just talk for a minute, because one of my ancient grandparents told me, learn about technical analysis without charts in front of you. You got to read books, you got to study. What's the #1 mistake newbies make when they do technical analysis?
Everybody thinks they're a trader. And we think trading is especially difficult, especially when so much trading is done by black boxes these days. We think it's better to look at technical analysis from a trend perspective. So most people think technical analysis is about trading.
It's about trading and what we call stochastic in and out. You get on a trend. How do you know where there's a bottom? How do you know when the trend starts?
Well, I'll give you an example. Of course, it's one of my greatest hits. But in October of 2001, we wrote a report, and I wrote a report entitled "Totally and Unequivocally Bullish," and it was about gold and gold stocks. And at that point, gold looked like it was turning, and I could get nobody interested on the buy side, the institutional side, to embrace the gold idea.
Right.
And I thought that when you had a trend change like that, where the item was above moving averages and they were starting to slope upward, and nobody believed the idea, then I think you have the sort of characteristics or the recipe for a good trend change.
There are two kinds of technical analysis. One is where they use other things like economics, fundamentals, and technical analysis. I'm in that group. There's others that are pure technical analysis. You mentioned your China analysis earlier. Which are you? Do you look at a spectrum of things, or are you just pure technical analysis?
I'm a pretty big reader, so I try to pay attention to a lot of things, but the ideas come from the charts, and they sort of engender questions in other regards. So if you didn't mention Niall Ferguson and his concerns about China, when we were doing our work on copper and then Freeport-McMoRan and the other copper-related stocks, we started to wonder, does this mean that economic growth is slowing?
How does technical analysis play in Apple? It's a moonshot. I mean, I can do the chart right here. There's the chart. It looks like that. How do you stay on trend with a juggernaut like Apple?
We got lucky in that we included it in our model portfolio in 2009, because we asked the question, how likely is it that a stock, going back to the internet age, was within 10% of a new all-time high? And that's the reason we included it, because we thought that Apple had a giant base. And that's the reason we focused on that. And we also focused on Amazon for many of the same respects. It had a giant base, and we thought the breakout would portend much higher prices.
Was it okay to do this without charts?
Sure.
Good. Okay, John Roque will come back. That's good. Thank you for coming by WJB as we try to do a little discussion there of technical analysis without the analysis.